Hey ladies and gentlemen, Steven here from Radolescence. Welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. And in today's episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at one of the newer releases by the company Parfum Vintage. And this one is called Euphony Intense. So make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin the video, I just want to mention that if you like this type of content, please do consider subscribing to this channel by clicking on that red button in the corner, and also make sure to enable notifications by clicking on the bell. This way, whenever I do upload future reviews, it'll get delivered straight to your feed. And I also want to mention that this product was actually sent to me by the company. All opinions will remain my own, of course. And for those of you who don't know, Parfum Vintage is a company that sort of makes their own version of more popular niche or designer fragrances. Sometimes they can be discontinued fragrances, sometimes they just happen to be really popular niche fragrances. In the case of Euphony Intense, this is their version of Creed's Aroma. Now, that's a fragrance that I've never owned. It's one that I want to own eventually, and I see myself purchasing a bottle of it following my wearings of this fragrance, because I do think that this is a perfect fragrance for the summertime. And the same can be said about Aroma, of course. I feel like in its place, I've always worn Millésime Imperial, and Millésime Imperial is one of these fragrances where it's fruity, it's salty, it's oceanic, it's aquatic. But in the case of this fragrance, I feel like it's a little bit smoother and it's not as biting, it's not as sharp, because that salty sort of ambergris opening of Millésime Imperial can get to be a little bit too much for some people, I think. Although I find that it smells really splendid and regal. But this one is a little bit more casual, a little bit more relaxed and laid back, a little more cavalier. So I'm actually really excited to tell you about Parfum Vintage's version of Creed's Aroma, what I think of the smell, and also do I think this is a good value, because of course, as I'm sure you know, it's significantly more inexpensive. I think Aroma goes for like $450 or something like that. And so I'm excited to tell you a little bit more of my thoughts regarding the smell. Let's start with the presentation. So the box for this fragrance is quite simple. You've seen one, you've seen them all, but I like how it has the gold accents here with this sort of embossed pattern here on the front. The Parfum Vintage logo may also be located on the top of the box, and the back of the box just sort of has this graphic here. And here is the bottle, wooden cap, gold hardware, pretty cool. And the bottom of the bottle just has a sticker with your information on it. The cap for this fragrance does not click into place, and it is quite a heavy bottle. Although I am picking it up from the cap, I don't suggest that you do so at home. And the distribution on the atomizer is incredibly wide, and it also contains a pressurized sprayer so you can control how much you want to spray. Let's continue with the smell. So this is a fragrance that I actually wore like 3 days in a row last week. And I personally love the way that this fragrance smells. Now, I do feel a little bit conflicted, because I'm like, do I prefer Millésime Imperial? Do I prefer this one? But Millésime Imperial is one of these fragrances where, if I'm being honest, I've worn it a lot when I go on vacation with my wife, my daughter, my father-in-law. And so I've commemorated a lot of really good occasions with MI. And every time I smell it, I'm always reminded of that time. And so a part of me doesn't want to destroy those memories by wearing it just like sitting on my couch playing video games or whatever, or editing videos. I would much prefer to preserve those memories. And so I find myself wearing MI for special occasions. Whereas Aroma, on the other hand, I feel like it's a bit more casual. I feel like it's the type of fragrance where I'm not necessarily worried about how I'm dressed when I wear it. I just want to smell good. I want to smell clean. I want to prolong that freshness. You just get out of the shower, you put on a few sprays of it, you feel amazing. And it kind of falls in the same olfactory category as Millésime Imperial. And so it opens up very fresh and oceanic. And I also think there might be a little bit of like an ambrox and ambergris thing going on in here. And it also has a little bit of a resemblance to Millésime Imperial. And of course, the same thing can be said about Creed's Aroma as well, not just Euphony Intense. However, I feel like the dry down is a little bit more smooth, and it's not as fruity smelling as Millésime Imperial. Now, I know a lot of people, when they talk about the smell of Millésime Imperial, they always talk about how it contains like this watermelon note. So it doesn't actually contain a watermelon note. It's just a combination of other ingredients that are sort of giving off that vibe or that impression. But you do get something in here that's just a tad bit sweet, but not overwhelmingly so. You're really gonna get more of like this salty presence in the opening. It dries down to something really oceanic and something a little spicy as well, but like clean spices. I know in my experience, the note of nutmeg sort of gives off this clean sort of oceanic vibe. And it's also used in fragrances like Ocean by Bath & Body Works, which is like a really weird fragrance to reference, but and it's now discontinued as well. But this one just smells very clean, very fresh, very appealing. I mean, this is honestly the type of fragrance you wear. You get out of the shower, you put on a freshly laundered t-shirt, you just want to smell good. You know that everybody you're going to come in contact with that day is going to love the way you smell. Whereas if you wear something like, I don't know, Green Valley or Vetiver Geranium, you might be taking a little bit more of a risk. I know the House of Creed is generally safe when it comes to their fragrances, unless you're wearing like Royal Oud, where you might get a small percentage of the population that doesn't like the way it smells. But with something like this, like everybody's gonna love the way that you smell. And I do think that in terms of the way that Parfum Vintage managed to do it, this one actually lasts longer than Arolfa on my skin. And I'm referring to decants that I've received maybe 3.5, 4 years ago or something like that. And we know that, you know, there are batch variations, and I'm sure they exist with Arolfa as well. So another thing that you're getting with Parfum Vintage is consistency across the board. You know that if you buy this fragrance now and you buy it 2 years from now, it's going to smell exactly the same. Reformulation is not really a thought or a concern or an issue or anything like that. Honestly, I think it's a great fragrance. Like I said, I wore it like 3 times in a row last week. I'm going to find myself wearing it a lot more as the days go on. And as a matter of fact, I'll make it my scent of the day today. I don't really mind. Fantastic distribution on the atomizer as well. It's just a great fragrance to wear, and I'm very happy with it. And I hope you guys have an opportunity to check it out as well. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. Now, first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, of course, this is not a unique fragrance. It is a clone. It is their inspiration of Creed's Arolfa. But one thing that I like about Parfum Vintage, and something that they occasionally do, is they'll take a fragrance and they'll try to sort of identify what ingredient of that fragrance do people want to smell more of. And so they'll either make that ingredient stronger, or they'll mitigate other ingredients. So I like how they kind of do this with a few other fragrances, kind of like Verbena Fields. And then there's, you know, you take Green Irish Tweed and then you make like the Lemon Verbena stronger in some, weaker in others. But I'm sure if you're familiar with Parfum Vintage, you already knew that. In terms of the overall smell, incredibly pleasant. I think one of the criticisms that people might give this fragrance is that it's a little bit too plain and a little bit too simple, but I know Arolfa definitely has its fans. A lot of people consider the fragrance to be quite underrated, and I know it has a very sort of strong following. In terms of the longevity, 8+ hours, which is awesome for this style of fragrance, and this is something that cannot necessarily be said about like Millésime Imperial or perhaps even the original Arolfa. In the case of this fragrance, it is strongly concentrated, and I'm not basing that off the label on the box. I'm just basing that off of my personal experience. And whenever I did wear it, I really didn't exceed more than like 5 or 6 sprays, and I was able to smell myself quite strongly. As a matter of fact, the following morning, you know, I smell my t-shirt and it's still lingering there. So projection on this one, fantastic, but only for about the first 2 hours. And I want to say it never really radiates beyond an arm's length, and so it's not a super loud fragrance, but it definitely gets the job done. Versatility on this one is also incredibly good. The only thing I would say is that I do think it's unisex. I do think it can be worn both dressed up and dressed down. I just find this one to lean a little bit more on the casual side, and I think summer is really the best time to wear this one. And Parfum Vintage has a lot of really good fragrances for the summertime. They have this one. They also have Aqua, which is their version of kind of like a 1-to-1 match of the 2016 version of Paco Rabanne's Invictus Aqua. I think I might be reviewing that on my channel sometime soon as well, because I think it's so season appropriate. But very versatile fragrance, not much more criticism there. In terms of the presentation, I think it's really cool. It's definitely Creed inspired in many ways. But my final verdict on this one is, this is such an obvious dumb reach. This is such a great scent to wear. If you're just looking for something to wear in the summertime, you don't want to give it much thought. You want to smell good. You want to rake in the compliments. You want something that smells nearly identical to Creed's Aroma, and perhaps even something that lasts longer than Creed's Aroma. I would definitely recommend that you check this one out. If you like, supporting the original brands, please do so. A lot of my Creed fragrances were purchased at retail, including Aventus, including Millésime Imperial, including Original Vetiver. So I have given them thousands of dollars of my business, but I also like supporting companies that like to make these super expensive $500,000 perfumes a little bit more accessible, and I think Parfum Vintage manages to do that in many ways. So thank you once again to Damien Stammers, the perfumer, for sending me this fragrance. I really do appreciate it. And also thank you at home so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Also, if you did take something of value from this video, please do consider subscribing to this channel by clicking the red button in the corner, and also make sure to enable notifications by clicking on the bell icon. This way, whenever I do review new fragrances in the future, it'll get delivered straight to your feed. You never need to worry about missing any of my future uploads. Thanks again for watching. Love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye.